Under a sky heavy with shadows, James and Tu Diep push through the night, their hearts pounding with fear and unyielding love. Every step into the unknown feels like a leap against fate, but the thought of baby Ni's innocent smile gives them strength, braving danger and uncertainty. They cling to hope like a lifeline. In the darkness, their love becomes a beacon guiding them toward the child who means everything. Will their courage be enough to bring Ni safely back into their arms? The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that makes every heartbeat sound too loud. James felt a sudden chill as he tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his headlights cutting through the darkness of the rural road. Beside him, Tu Diep's hands trembled, but her eyes burned with determination. Baby Ni was missing, and every second felt heavier than the last. Just hours earlier, their world had seemed so ordinary. Diep selling fresh melons at the market, James finishing contracts for the Bissy farm, and Ni giggling while eating her breakfast. They had argued gently about teaching Tu Diep to ride a motorbike, and about James's strict father, who still disapproved of their decision to raise Ni. But all of those small worries evaporated when Hung called someone had seen a shadowy figure leading a small child away from the edge of the village. Fear clawed at Tu Diep's chest. Ni wasn't just a child under her care, she was her heartbeat, her promise to heal the wounds of a little girl who had already lost too much. James reached across the console, squeezing her hand. "We'll find her," he said, his voice low but steady, even as his own heart pounded like thunder. The village was dark now. Save for a few flickering street lamps, they searched the schoolyard first, calling Ni's name into the night air. Crickets answered, but no child's voice returned. Tu Diep's breath caught when she saw a small, abandoned shoe near the roadside ditch, the same pink sandal Ni had worn that morning. A rush of panic threatened to drown her, but James knelt beside the shoe, his jaw tightening. He was a man used to pressure contracts, business deals, even his father's unyielding expectations, but this was different. This was family. They followed faint footprints toward the old irrigation canal, the place where farmers sometimes stored their harvest. The air smelled of wet earth and distant rain. A low sound, a whimper, broke through the night. Tu Diep froze, straining to hear. James signaled for silence, his eyes sharp. The whimper came again. This time from behind a stack of hay bales. Moving quietly, James stepped forward, his phone's flashlight slicing through the shadows. A man's silhouette jerked upright, startled. It was John, the bitter rival who had once tried to sabotage James's business. His face was hard, but his hands trembled. "Stay back," John hissed, clutching Ni's arm. The little girl's wide eyes glistened with tears. Tu Diep's voice cracked but stayed gentle. "John, please." "She's just a child," her words trembled in the air, fragile as glass. James stepped closer, his body tense, ready to fight if he had to. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Hurting her won't fix what happened between us." For a moment, time held its breath. Then, something in John's gaze faltered. Maybe it was the memory of his own losses. Maybe it was the unwavering way Tu Diep shielded Ni with her body. He released the girl's arm, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of his anger had finally crushed him. Without another word, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving only the sound of retreating footsteps. Tu Diep gathered Ni into her arms, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. James wrapped his arms around both of them, holding them as if the world could break apart at any moment. The night was still dark, but it no longer felt empty. It felt alive with their breaths, their heartbeats, and the quiet strength that bound them. As they walked back toward the faint glow of the village lights, Ni's small hand slipped into Tu Diep's. James glanced at them and felt a surge of fierce love. Danger had tested them, but it had also revealed something unshakable. Together, they could face any darkness. The road ahead would not always be easy. There would still be his father's disapproval, the whispers of the village, and the shadows of past grudges. But tonight, under the wide, starless sky, they had rescued more than just a child. They had rescued hope. James carried Ni on his back as they approached the faint glow of their village, the night air cool against their damp skin. Tu Diep walked beside him, her fingers brushing against Ni's small hand every so often, as if she needed constant reassurance the girl was really safe. Each step crunched against the gravel road, a sound that felt grounding after the chaos. When they reached the edge of the village, the soft light from the old wooden houses spilled into the darkness. A few neighbors, roused by the commotion, peeked through their windows. Hung ran toward them, breathless, his face etched with worrying. When he saw Nee clinging to James's shoulders, his relief was so visible it almost looked like tears. "You found her," Hung whispered, voice shaking. "We were ready to search the forest. She's safe," James said quietly, though his voice was still taut with lingering adrenaline. But John was there. He took her. Shock flashed in Hung's eyes, then hardened into anger. But James shook his head before Hung could speak. "Let him go tonight. He's not finished with his anger. But chasing him now will only make him desperate." Tu Diep knelt, adjusting Nee's disheveled hair and wiping her tear-streaked cheeks. "We're home now, sweetheart," she murmured. Nee sniffled and whispered, "I was scared, Mama." Hearing her call her Mama again broke something inside Tu Diep in a good way. She pressed her forehead to Nee's and whispered, "I'll never let you go." Later, after Nee was safely tucked into bed at Tu Diep's small house, the room glowed softly under a single lamp. James stood by the window, his shirt still damp from the night's chase, staring at the horizon where darkness met the hills. Tu Diep brought him a cup of warm tea. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. His hands wrapped around the cup, but he didn't drink. "I can't stop thinking about what John said before he ran. He's still holding on to everything that happened with my family. And I know my father's disapproval isn't just about appearances, it's about old wounds." Tu Diep sat across from him, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her own cup. "James, do you think your father will make things harder for us?" James turned, his eyes soft but firm. "He might try, but tonight reminded me of what matters. I almost lost Nee, and I almost saw you in danger. Whatever my father says, whatever John tries, none of it matters more than keeping you to safe, outside." The crickets sang again, a steady, peaceful chorus. For the first time in hours, the world seemed to exhale. The next morning, sunlight poured through the thin curtains, casting gentle stripes across the wooden floor. Nee was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed and humming softly. Tu Diep watched her for a moment. Her heart swelling with gratitude, she glanced toward James, who had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted but still protective even in rest. Tu Diep quietly stepped outside to the small garden, where the dew still clung to the leaves of the melon vines. She touched one of the ripening fruits and whispered a silent promise to herself they would not let fear or anger tear apart the fragile happiness they had built. She knew there would be whispers in the village, perhaps even another confrontation with James's father. But she also knew what she had seen in James's eyes last night in wavering resolve. Behind her, James appeared in the doorway, his voice gentle but steady. "We'll face it all together, Tu Diep, John, my father. Whatever comes." Tu Diep turned to him, the morning light catching the traces of fatigue on his face. And she smiled, a quiet, fierce smile that held all her hope. "Together," she echoed, and for the first time since the night had swallowed their world in fear, she truly believed it. That evening, the village buzzed quietly with whispers about the night before. Word of Nee's disappearance had spread, and neighbors dropped by with small gifts, fresh bread, a bowl of rice soup, even a handmade toy to show their relief. Nee clung shyly to Tu Diep's leg as she accepted each offering, her wide eyes still a little wary of the outside world. James stayed close, keeping an eye on every shadow, though John had vanished. James knew a man like that rarely gave up so easily. He also knew his father's arrival was imminent. His mother's brief message that afternoon had confirmed it. The thought of his father stepping off the plane, full of pride and anger, churned James's stomach. Later, as the sky burned orange and purple with the setting sun, James and Tu Diep walked with Nee down the quiet dirt path near the melon field. Nee skipped a little now, her laughter timid but returning, like the first rays of sunlight after a storm. Tu Diep held her small hand and looked up at James. "Do you think your father will forgive us?" she asked softly. James's gaze lingered on the horizon. "I don't know if forgiveness is what he'll offer," he admitted. "But I don't need him to forgive me for loving you and for choosing me. I just need him to see that this isn't a mistake." Tu Diep nodded. But her heart tightened. She had seen the way people like James's father could wield their influence, how tradition and pride could become weapons sharper than knives. She also knew that, no matter how gentle her smile or how pure her intentions, some would see her only as a single mother who didn't belong. As they reached the edge of the field, the wind stirred the tall grass, carrying with it the faint scent of ripening fruit. Nee let go of Tu Diep's hand to chase a firefly, her giggles breaking through the evening air. For a moment, everything felt perfect, fragile, but perfect. Then, from the shadows of the trees, a voice cut through the calm. James. James froze. John stepped forward, his face half-lit by the fading sun. He no longer looked like a desperate kidnapper now. He seemed worn, almost haunted. But his voice was still edged with bitterness. "You think last night solves everything," John said quietly. "You think you can just walk away with her and pretend the past never happened." James stepped in front of Tu Diep and Nee, his stance protective. "I don't want to fight you, John, but you crossed a line." Taking Nee was, "She's not the only one who's been hurt," John interrupted, his voice cracking. "Your family took everything from mine years ago. And now you stand here acting like a hero." Tu Diep could feel Nee trembling behind her. She swallowed her fear and spoke softly, her words deliberate. "John, revenge won't heal what was broken. You nearly destroyed a little girl's trust last night. Please, don't make this worse." For a long moment, the only sound was the rustling grass and Nee's uneven breathing. John's shoulders slumped slightly, the anger in his eyes flickering with something else, regret, maybe, or exhaustion. But before anyone could speak again, the crunch of tires on gravel echoed from the road. A black sedan rolled to a stop, and an older man stepped out, tall, stern, his silver hair catching the last light of day. James's father. His sharp gaze swept over the scene, his son standing protectively before Tu Diep, John lurking like a ghost from the past, and little Nee clutching her mother's skirt. His voice, when it came, was as cold and controlled as James had feared. "So this is the chaos you built, James." The air seemed to thicken, the sun slipping fully beneath the horizon as the darkness gathered around them. James straightened, his jaw set. Tu Diep's heart pounded, but she reached for his hand anyway. And in that small gesture, fingers intertwined against the growing night, they both silently promised that they would not back down. The darkness might be closing in again, but they had already proven they could rescue hope once. This time, they would defend it. Family is built on choice and commitment, not just blood. James and Tu Diep's willingness to protect and raise Nee, even when faced with opposition and danger, shows that true family is defined by care and responsibility, not traditional labels. Courage shines brightest in dark moments. When Nee was taken, fear could have paralyzed them. Instead, James and Tu Diep acted bravely, proving that even ordinary people can be heroes when they refuse to give up on those they love. Forgiveness and understanding are stronger than revenge. John's anger came from old wounds, but taking revenge only deepened the pain. The story reminds us that healing requires empathy and dialogue, not violence or hatred. Stand firm for what is right, even against pressure. James's father represented societal expectations and pride, but James chose integrity over approval. The lesson is to hold fast to your values and the people who matter. Even when others disagree, hope can be rescued, too. Beyond rescuing Nee, James and Tu Diep saved something intangible: the hope that even in darkness, love and unity can prevail.